Welcome to the Lead to Succeed podcast, a podcast where you hear firsthand leadership stories, tips, and hacks to enhance your life and career. Brought to you by Zahi Abdeen and Usama Al Musa.
I'm very excited and welcome you all, those who are watching us, who are hearing us. We're very pleased to go into the very exciting topic. We hear, be the change you want to be in this universe. And some people will say, oh, now it's very chaotic. We want some stability. So what's going on with the field of change? And so this is why we are very pleased to have Rick Maurer between us. Rick, it's a great pleasure to have you here and to talk about the topic of change. You just said, why do we support people support us, or why they resist us? Yeah, this is very interesting. We're looking for a very interesting podcast for today, and I leave it for you. Let's get to know you more. What brings you to the topic of change, and what qualified you to be this distinguished speaker and author in the field of change and building change strategies? Thank you.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Thank you, Rick. It's to you. Let's get to know more about you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, this is going to seem like it's a longer story than it's really going to be. But when I first got out of school, grad school, I wanted to work with kids who were labeled emotionally disturbed in schools. And so, although that's what I thought I was being trained to do, the program I was in said, no, a lot of these kids aren't disturbed. It's the schools that are disturbed. And if you can change schools, you'll have let fewer kids acting up. And by the way, you guys just nodded. When I tell leaders that, they nod too. I mean, they get it. And
But the organizations, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. What I found when I went out to work in a school, you can imagine, here I am, I have no work experience at all. And I go into schools and I'm basically saying to other teachers, hi, I'm here to help. I mean, you can imagine, I have no experience and I'm here to help. And that just didn't go over. And I would keep trying things and come up with what I thought were good ideas. Nothing worked. And it started to dawn on me, it wasn't them, it was me. You know, it isn't that they were old and couldn't think new thoughts. It was me that was getting in the way. And out of that, I learned about the field of organization development, working with people and organizations. From that, went into the study of resistance and support. Why do people support? Why do they resist? And that just took me deep. I had started consulting at that time, and in the mid-90s, wrote a book called Beyond the Wall of Resistance. And I had written other books, and people, liked them and they were okay. This one, books are supposed to change other people's lives. This book changed my life because people started calling me saying, hey, could you come help us with that, what you're talking about? So I didn't have to use other people's models anymore. And what it did is it allowed me to go into an area that I'm very excited about and keep learning. And I wrote a book last year. I'm working on some new stuff right now. I mean, even this morning before I got on the call with you, I'm thinking about this stuff. So it's very fresh for me because I never feel like I've gotten to the bottom of it. I don't feel like, oh, I know everything about resistance to change now. Well, the answer is no. And so that's what keeps me going. And so my consulting is basically advising leadership teams, coaching, teaching them my model, but I don't work on big projects anymore. I don't show up on Monday morning and 6 months later I leave. I mean, it's just, there's a role for that. That's not what I do. So I really like it. Like working with clients is a lot like the three of us right now, just talking to each other, so.
Great, thank you. Change, resistance. One day I came across something in the psychology. They keep talking about the loss of social identity and we resist changes out of that concern of Now we've been very much known for that social identity. So how comes we're going to lose it? Yeah. And this is very interesting. It's great to see where are you now, and that you're keep the pipeline goes on with new books. And,
Yeah.
so thank you. We appreciate this, Rick. And how do you see with COVID the changing trends internationally? Yeah, we thought one day that we're going to stabilize, but now COVID came in and the whole thing is changing. We used to hear the concept of VUCA. Now we're talking about different concept. This life is more incomprehensible. It's more brittle and more anxious. So what do we see in the future as trends about change? And let's take it from here, Rick. Thank you.
Okay. I think the clearest way I can address what you're asking is to tell you what my model of resistance and support is. It's very simple. And there are three levels. And on the resistance side, it's I don't get it. I don't understand what you're saying. The second one is I don't like it, which is based on fear. There's something about your idea that scares me. And level three is I don't like you. And what that really means is I don't have trust or confidence in you for a change like this. Okay. And then there's a positive side to each of those. And so people need to understand us. They need to go, hey, that's interesting. I like that. And they need to trust the people leading them. All of those work together. All of those are alive all the time, either working for us or against us. It's just energy, and that energy is always there. So to address your question, you started with social identity. Social identity is really in that level 2 spot. I don't like it. Like this could threaten who I am. Well, now, let's say the three of us are planning some change and people start to fear that this is going to, whether it is or not, or whether it was our intention or not, is not the point. The point is for them, they're afraid. And fear is not rational. So the moment I get afraid that you're doing something to me, suddenly I literally cannot hear you talk about timelines and budgets and all of that. I'm worried about me and my identity. That's a huge issue on whether it's social identity or I'm afraid for my career, my family, what's going to happen. All of that really gets in the way of change. And a big problem, and I'm hunch is it's a big problem around the world, but here in the States, we don't know how to talk about emotions. So meetings go by and we talk about the stuff that will fit on a PowerPoint slide, the facts and figures and budgets and all of that, which is important stuff. And what we miss is people are there just, my God, how am I going to pay my bills? We've got a child going to college. What are we going to do? And that can get in the way. And the whole meeting takes place at this level 1 where we're talking, I raise my hand, and let's say inside I'm scared to death. And you go, Rick, and I go, could you go back to the last slide? I have a question about the budget. No, I don't have a question about the budget. It's all it feels safe to talk about. And I'm hoping that by asking about the budget, you'll get, wow, he's really scared. And that just doesn't happen much. And then the third thing, the I don't like you, is what I mean by that is I don't have confidence in you to lead something like that. And that could come from social identity. Like when I work outside the United States and a client says, and we brought this consultant in from the United States and he's written books. People in the group are not thinking, oh, this is wonderful. They're thinking, oh, another consultant from the States. Oh, and he's written books. Oh, he must be a know-it-all. So that's what pretty much is going on. And so I better have a way to go right into that. And so I'll make fun of it. I'll make fun of me and say, I bet you're thinking right now, and I'll because if I can't do that, if I can't make them see that, wow, Rick's an okay guy, I'm toast. I don't know if you know that expression, but I'm just, I'm not going to be able to do any kind of good work at all. So.
Thank you, Rick. And just a correction, last name is Maurer. That's how you pronounce it, correct?
It is, yeah. And, as I was saying before, it's in different parts of the world and in different parts of the country, it gets pronounced very different ways. So,
Yes.
but where my family was in Ohio, that's how it's pronounced. So that must be the right way.
I have to say that I've used your model in almost every change conversation I had, whether in coaching or in training, and it's always a hit. And I think it resonates with people well. And I think it resonates well because it talks about the human the human element when it comes to change. A lot of other models that we read about and we use in organizations doesn't consider the human factor. Yep. And that's why I love it. And it's always an attention getter. People can understand it real. I mean, it's simple. However, it's really deep. I mean, you talk about 3 levels, straightforward 3 levels. Of course, the third level is the hardest, is where it requires that. That's where leadership comes from. That's where you need trust. That's where you're building psychological safety within your organization, within your team. And that's how you can take care of that type of resistance and so forth. So thank you for that. It's an amazing model. We know
Actually,
that.
Could I say something else? Because I want to compliment you. What your description of level 3, the trust and confidence one, you said I think you might have said it's the most important one. It's foundational, and a lot of people don't recognize that. I mean, they see it as, that's just another, I've got level 1, check, got level 2, check, and it's not, it's always there. So I really appreciate the way you described it.
It's level 3 is deep because it doesn't start when the change happens. It starts from day 1. That's what leadership is all about. That you should already have built that trust, that psychological safety. So when change happens, you don't see resistance as much as you probably should. We know that about the success of change initiatives, usually around 30 to 40%. And do you think it's all about human? It's all about people resisting? Or what do you think the reason is?
Yeah, it's not all about the people part. I mean, sometimes organizations get involved in a change and it just wasn't the right idea at the right time. But they did their due diligence. It just didn't work. Or they run out of money and they were expecting something, so there are other reasons. But I believe, and clients have said this to me, resistance is the biggest reason. And the either the good news or the bad news is it's avoidable. We can avoid most of that resistance if we handle change. So we make change much harder than it has to be. I mean, building a jet engine is hard. I know it's never going to be easy, but the human part, we can make it not just manageable, we can make it part of, of energizing what's going on, of creating quality and forward momentum. And oddly enough, people nod their heads and go, that makes sense, but we don't do it nearly enough. So we're responsible for the failure of a lot of changes. So I don't know the percentage, but it's a lot.
Yes, for sure. So where do we go from here in the topic of change? I mean, what's new? Are there anything that you're researching and recently when it comes to change? I know you wrote a new book. We'll be talking about that in a minute. But where do you think that where are we heading?
I wish I had something positive to say about that. The stuff that I've been working on since my book came out in 1996, the fact that you're using it, I'm still using it, and people are going, oh, so what's level 2 again? I mean, and you don't have to be using my model. I'm not suggesting that, but those same issues are still as alive as they were 25 years ago. And why that's a problem is right behind these doors, I have my backup office, and I've got books and books, and I've got a couple shelves filled with books on leadership, change management, influence. Those all have come out in the last 25 years. So we've got lots of good thinking, lots of good, research, ideas, suggestions out there, and still the failure rate stays really high. So my suggestion quite often to clients is, before you try something new, let's take a look at the old stuff and saying, what do you already know? What could we be doing? And what I found when I was working on big projects with clients, sometimes they would call me in because they wanted something new. And so I remember one chemical plant, and I would teach my stuff. And the next month I would go back, and they hadn't used any of it. And then I would go back the next month, and they said, Rick, tell us something new. And I said, you're not using the old stuff. I mean, there's, and it's, there was something, I don't know, they were busy. And they were bright people, but it's almost like if we sit here and he talks, he's going to say something magical and everything's going to be okay. And that's not it. So I think that the new thing is we really ought to pay attention to the resources we already have. So if it's Rick Maurer stuff, great. If it's John Kotter stuff, wonderful. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of good stuff out there. So
you recently wrote a book called Beyond the Wall of, sorry, that's your old book, Beyond the Wall of Written. Your current book is Seizing Moments of Possibilities, Ways to Trigger Energy and Forward Momentum on Your Ideas and Plans. What made you write this book, and tell us a little bit more about it?
And actually that question connects back to the one you just asked. What's new for me is not a new model, but a new way of approaching it. What I started to realize is that change management was being treated as a separate activity. So an organization is working on some big project. It could be an IT project, information technology. It could be a marketing. It doesn't make a difference what it is. And then they think, we need change management. We need the people part there. But it's something that they attach to the work they're already doing. So it's something extra. And so what happens quite often is we'll do it when we have time. And nobody ever has extra time. I never go in to clients and on Tuesday morning, they say, we don't know what we're going to do today. We're just not busy. That just doesn't happen. And so what the new book is about is, look, I hope this image makes sense to you guys. I think we need to think more like baristas, those people who make coffee. Okay. I have a coffee shop about a mile down the road, and it's open again. And I'm really happy about that. And I go down there and I get in line, and invariably there's someone there who orders a latte. And never once have I heard that person say, hey, tell you what, give me a latte, but hold the milk. No milk today. You can't do that. A latte is a blend of espresso and steamed milk, period. You can have other little add-ons, but the two essential ingredients are coffee and milk, period. And what I'm suggesting in this new book to people is, look, if you believe that you need support, then support needs to be blended in, seamlessly blended in to everything you're doing, not as an add-on, not as an extra meeting. It's fine to have extra planning meetings that if you want, but that conference call that you have scheduled an hour from now, how do you build support, energy, excitement into that? And what I find is that people say, this was happening to me just before COVID. And I had a client, and it was going to be like a year-long project. And they believed in what I was saying. I mean, I went through my model and blah, blah, and they really liked it. And they said, yeah, this is going to be very helpful. And boy, it's been a problem in the past when we haven't done that. And then they didn't work with it. And I would, I'd come in once a week and I'd say some stuff, and they go, yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. And months would go by. And it was, they one hand, they believed this human stuff was important. On the other hand, they were so busy, that it was like they didn't have time. And I remember walking into one of the meetings with an executive, and he said, oh yeah, this is another one of those meetings where we fill out forms and look at timelines. But he said it really sarcastically. And it was like nobody believed what they were doing. It's our job today is to fill out this form, period. If we get done filling, whether we fill it out, it's good or bad, that doesn't make a difference. As long as we fill it out, we can then go back to our real work. And so the book is about, all right, how do you take that routine meeting that you've got on Tuesday morning, and what can you do to add some vitality and some life to it? And I'd be glad to give examples. I just want to make sure I'm clear right now. Does that make sense to you guys?
Absolutely. Go ahead, give us some examples. That'll be great.
Yeah. Okay. I know a nuclear physicist, and he works in a research lab with a lot of other highly educated physicists. And he said, whenever I present an idea to them, I'm presenting to them because I want their support. We need funding. We need to say, we'll make this a priority. He said, I have to use PowerPoint. I have to use slides. And he said, it's not the best way to present this. But if I don't use slides, they think I'm not prepared. So the organization almost demands that we use slides. And we got talking, and he really realized that by filling up all the time with slides, he wasn't going to start to build support. So we talked about it. A couple of weeks later, he calls me and he said, I figured it out. He said, I had this meeting scheduled where I was supposed to go over this idea. And let's say he had an hour. And he said, typically, someone like me would use 50 slides during that hour. It'd be a lot of information on these slides. And he said, I started to wonder what's the fewest number of slides I could use, still make all the points I needed to, and let the people go, oh, he prepared for this. And he said it was 5. So instead of 50, he used 5 slides. He said, I covered all the same material, but because I wasn't having to read all that stuff on the slides or give people time to read all that stuff on the slides, it gave people an opportunity to jump in, to ask questions, to make points. And so, are you saying, and he said, the energy just started to build in that room. And typically, he said, at the end of one of those meetings, people are half asleep. They're just sitting there quietly. And here they're engaged, and people are going, hey, Dave, I wanted to hear more about that. Let's talk more about that. What changed in that meeting? It was the same people, the same room, the same amount of time, the same bad coffee. The only thing that changed is he used fewer slides and opened up the possibility for an exchange. So that's just incredibly simple. He didn't need a consultant for that. He didn't need extra money for that. I mean, it was using the time he had and say, how do I make that a better thing? Let me give you one other very different example. There's a company here in the United States called Rhino Foods, like rhinoceros, Rhino Foods. And they make ingredients that go into dessert products. So they don't sell to consumers, but they sell to people who make ice cream in them. And it was family owned. There are about 90 employees. And the owner got up and spoke to everybody. And he said, I have some very bad news. He said, our whole industry is in a downturn. And he said, these things happen, but we're not pulling out of it. And he said, I don't know what's happening. It's not us, it's the whole industry. So, these ice cream manufacturers aren't buying our products right now. And he said, I've done everything I know how to do to reduce costs. And the only thing left, he said, I'm very sorry to say this, is downsizing. He said, we have never done that in the history of our company. I feel very sad that we have to do it. And then he said, and I think it was just sort of an afterthought, he said, look, if any of you have any ideas that you think could really either save us money or make us money that we're not seeing, he said, I think I've thought about just about everything, but if I'm wrong, I mean, I will take your stuff seriously. 90 employees gave him 111 ideas. And so he pulled some people together and said, there's a lot of good stuff here. Let's see what we can do. And they broke it out into, I think, like 5 major themes. And they started applying them. And they weathered that storm with no layoffs. 2 years later, the industry went into a dive again. They took that off the shelf and did the same things. Were able to do it. So the only thing different that he did to a meeting that, I don't know if you've probably been in those meetings where an executive has to say we're downsizing. It's generally sad. And they just want to get off the stage as quickly as possible. And I bet he did too. But he just opened it up like, if any of you have any ideas, I will consider them. I mean, he said, I can't make a promise that I'm doing. That was like a latte. It's like trying to engage people. It's not a guarantee that it's going to work, but it's trying to get, to get a conversation, to get some value from those 90 people who are right there. So those are 2 examples.
Interesting examples, Rick. You provoked me one day. I was in a congress. I do recall back it was in UK. And one of the presentations were about change management. And the speaker said, can we change? Yes. Do we change? Not really. And from that moment, yeah, and I also related to what Zai said about the failure rate, what you just mentioned, that, are the results as promising as the way we talk about change? This is a question mark, yeah. And you open the door toward what to do to enhance or to get more, to encourage people more towards buying into changes. Yeah. And I'm someone who believes into as well 2 things here, like the milk and the espresso, that combination. It's partly external, partly internal. Yeah. Partly where leaders are supposed to enhance the context for people to move forward with it, and also there is the internal aspect that is on the individual own responsibility, what to do to absorb and move forward. So here, what are your recommendations for leaders who are managing changes, or for individuals who will be impacted by change?
Okay. More of my work is with the leaders, so I'll have more to say on that. But I've started and these questions are in the book. By the way, the ebook version of the book is free, so there's not a sales pitch here. So I open the book with a few questions, and 2 of those questions are questions I ask new clients all the time. And I'll say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is it for you to build support for change? 5 would be very high, 1 would be low. And frankly, if they say 5 or 4, I'll say, great, then I think, we really ought to talk. If they say a 3, I said, I'm glad to work with you, but my concern is that you may want to get people involved in that when it's convenient. And when it's not convenient, you're too busy, you say, well, no, let's put off that meeting with Rick. Let's make it. And I said, and that can be dangerous. And the reason it's dangerous is 1 week, it sounds like you really care about what people say. And the next week, it sounds like you don't. And so it can be a problem. If you scored a 2 or a 1, you really shouldn't hire me. I mean, I'm a bad fit for you. The stuff I'm saying, it just won't work. In fact, if you try it, people will know that you're doing something you don't believe in, and that could make things worse. So I do that. The second question, the first time I ever asked it, people started looking away and laughing, kind of that nervous laughter. So I thought, okay, this is a good question. Scale of 1 to 5, how willing are you to be influenced by the people you're trying to influence? Let me say it again. How willing are you to be influenced by those other people? And I say, if you scored a 4 or 5, we can work together, because my stuff really involves like saying, hey, if any of you have any great ideas, hey, use less slides, fewer slides, and, give a chance for people to talk. I said, there's all kinds of stuff we could do. If you scored it a 3, that's okay, because it might be you need some practice doing this kind of stuff to realize you're getting some good ideas. Okay. If you scored a 2 or a 1, do not even open my book. I mean, it'll just, you won't like it. They won't like it. Just don't do it. And so what I want to do, and the first thing I would say to leaders is ask yourself those 2 questions. How important is it that we build support for change? And am I willing to be influenced by those people? And there's nothing wrong. In some organizations, they don't value those kind of things. I don't want to work in those organizations, but, they're successful. But if you say, no, this is really important and we've got to have support, or I want to have support for whatever reason, then I think those questions are essential. And what that does, it says, that's my mindset. That's how I'm looking at this kind of thing. And to me, that's the starting point. And then the second thing for leaders, this quote comes from a very famous sports figure here in the States. His name was Yogi Berra. He played baseball, but baseball's not the important part about it. And he said, you can observe a lot. You can observe a lot just by watching. And people generally laugh, but I was working with a client who had trained in the Toyota production system. He used that quote all the time. And in fact, there's one of the guys, his name was Ono. They had the Ono circle in Toyota, where we would go out and say, all right, I want you to stand there and I want you to watch what's going on in that workstation for the next 2 hours. Don't do anything. Just watch. And I remember I was in a training program and had to do it. 30 minutes was like, I've seen everything there is to see. If Ono, I've never worked with Ono, but if he came by, he would probably say, no, that's not enough, Rick. Keep looking. So I think the big thing is you got to ask those questions, is it important? Am I willing to be influenced? And the second is you just got to start opening your eyes. And the easiest place to open your eyes is to watch other people work. So let's say Osama's got a meeting this afternoon and Zai, you and I go. So we get to watch him and we get to watch how people react to him. And we can learn a lot. So if it's going really well, we can learn a lot. If it's just going downhill, we can learn a lot. And it's easier to start by looking at other people and go, I wouldn't have done that. Oh, why is he doing it that way? Why is she doing it that way? Those are the apps. I got a lot of stuff in the book, but those are the 2 essential things that leaders could do today without any embarrassment, without, with basically very little effort. I can say more, but let me just stop at this point.
This is very profound, it's, it came in mind this way, how much the one who's driving a change, or he or she or senior management, how much they are themselves receptive to it. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of the behavior, the cultural impact on? Is it just I know we're like more into the context that is the direct impact on us, but it's good if we also know from you more. What's the impact of culture, behavior on accepting? Sometimes we know the competency model, so we just accepting changes, receptive to changes, and we give labeling. So let's also dig deeper here into the culture impact, the behavior impact, into being receptive to change, and how can we see it with your eyes?
See, I think I understand your question. If I don't, interrupt me. Tell me that I'm not.
Sure.
The I think one of the problems we have is we look for little signals to let us know that people are behind us, that are on board, they're with us. And there's nothing wrong with looking for little signals, but we'll let the least little thing go, oh yeah, well, Zai was nodding his head during the meeting. He must be on board. He must like this. Well, maybe there's other stuff. So we need to keep looking, and we need to keep saying, is the project where we need it to be? We started it 3 months ago. I remember a chief executive officer saying one time, he'd come up with this idea, and when he would go out on the floor and say, how's it going? People go, oh, hey, it's going great, da, 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 da. And he said, it took me 2 months to realize that all I was getting was malicious compliance. People were just going along so I would leave the room. So a lot of times it's really hard to tell. So what he needed to do, and I think he was then starting to do it, is one, he realized that people were saying stuff, but it wasn't matching what was really happening in the workstation. So there needs to be that kind of thing like, I would have thought we would have been further along. Our deadline was January 1st, and we're nowhere near that. I wonder what's going on, and being curious about that kind of thing, I think is really critical. One of the problems that in change management, I wish I had a really thick book right here. I don't. But imagine that our change plan is this really big, thick book. It's really easy to say, well, we did step 117, check that off. Okay, now we're going to go on. And of course, you need that kind of plan if you're doing something very technical. But you also, that plan ought to include, and are people on board? Are they doing it to the level of quality and that we need to have? And that isn't in there. There's one big plan. It's a very famous one, and I will not say it by name. They actually have a step that says deal with resistance to change. So it's almost like you could predict that resistance to change will happen on January 14th. So be ready for it. I mean, it's going into it without our eyes open. We're not observing a lot. And am I addressing what you asked?
Yeah, thank you. That's it. And again, this is also very profound as well. It's very impactful. Malicious compliance, you said. Wow.
Yeah.
It's just wow.
We do see that in a lot of cultures within organizations, that you really don't. I mean, first of all, I love what you said, that we make change harder than what it is. I mean, yeah. And all you have to do is just ask, observe, look back at what's going on, and you'll see the levels of resistance, or where the resistance is, and how can you tackle it. And I love that your focus is the individual, the human being. And that's where it gets a lot of time neglected during transformation initiatives, during change initiatives, and thank you for that. My question to you, and my last question to you is, Rick Maurer, the person, what are some of your strengths that got you where you're at? And I can name one is empathy, because you always look at the human being in situations, and I love that. What are some of your other strengths that you have that got you where you're at today?
I have to mix my strengths with my weaknesses in describing it. It's one of the things that I think I do really well is, and because people have told me this, is that I take complex stuff and make it understandable. So, and like you say, you're using the 3 levels of resistance with clients, and I came up with that model. I've revised it a little bit, but came up with it 1995. So that makes me happy. It makes me happy that I come up with stuff that people remember and are able to use. And I've been told a lot that I do that really well. I also get told that I have good examples so that people go, oh, that's what you're talking about. And so I work at that. I really work at, taking notes when I hear a good story, that sort of thing. God, a great comic actress just died 2 days ago, Betty White. And I just heard a thing about her. So I would love to tell that story quickly. It actually relates. But basically, I think that's what I do. I come up with models that people can use, and I'm good at communicating those. What I'm not so good at is what most consultants do. I can facilitate meetings okay. Like if I'm working on a project with somebody, I can facilitate a meeting really well. But to call me in to facilitate a meeting, I hate it. And I used to do it. Because that's where the work was. And the problem was I did it okay, but it wasn't good enough that you would say, oh, you ought to call Rick. And there's a lot about regular consulting that I just don't do well. And part of it is, I lack the skill, but it's more, I lack the interest. And when I'm not interested in something, it comes across. And sometimes it comes across to the client before it comes across to me. And I've done a much better job in recent years of knowing, okay, this is something, if I go in, this can be a good partnership. This can work. I think I really have something to offer. And knowing when to say, no, I'm not a good fit. Here's why. That's why I ask those 2 questions to clients, because I really want to make sure that it's a good fit. And frankly, there are other consultants, you could say, could you do A? And they go, yeah. Could you do G? Yeah. Could you do Z? Yeah, I could do that. And they're probably right, and I'm not that guy. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Osama, any final words?
Thank you, Rick. It was very nice. And thanks for sharing those examples as well. This is very enriching, and, people, those who are watching us, listening to this podcast will relate a lot to what you just mentioned. So thank you. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's really been a pleasure. I've liked this.
Thank you so much. The last thing, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, thank you. My website is the best way to get in touch with me, and my contact information is there. But the website is very simple. It's Rick Maurer, and it's RickMaurer, rickmaurer.com. And on the homepage there, if you just scroll down just a tiny bit, you'll see this book. And all you have to do is click and put in your email address, and you'll get the ebook version of it. It's the print book, and the audio book is available on Amazon. But I basically, and that's fine, but I wrote it so that it would be free. And that's why I'm doing it. Amazon doesn't allow you to give away free books. They're a business. They're not idiots. But here, I really want people using the book. And that's why the primary way of talking about it is through my website. And so that's the only place to get it. And by the way, if people are worried about giving their email address, I am not one of those people who just starts blasting you with emails. I hate that, so I'm not going to do it myself. So
great. Well, Rick, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, for me too.
And hopefully we'll meet again at some point.
That'd be wonderful. Good. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Lead to Succeed podcast. If you like this podcast, please remember to give us 5-star rating, share it with your family and friends, and follow us on social media. We also welcome you to send us your ideas, suggestions, and any question. Our contact details will be found on the podcast description. This is Osama and Zahi, and until next time, make sure to remain authentic, keep learning, and to enjoy life.